you are the founder of a very popular, famous restaurant here in Los Angeles.
Yes.
That recently made a big announcement. So what was that announcement?
We decided to not be a vegan restaurant anymore, and we are going to be a regenerative agriculture-based restaurant. And so all of our food the majority of our food is going to come from regenerative agriculture farms, and all of our protein, eggs, and dairy are coming from regenerative farms. So we'll be the first regenerative kitchen in Los Angeles. And the journey started some years ago. I wanted to take all the food scraps out of my restaurants and not have them go to the landfill. And so in 2015, I started looking for a farm. And 2018, I purchased a farm. And I quickly realized that the idea of veganism was very closely related to being in an urban environment and being disconnected from nature, and that there isn't anything, not that there isn't things that opt to eat plants in nature, but that everything is always consuming and dying and consuming and dying and consuming, and that is the way of nature. And this idea that we could just step outside of that and say, like, I don't put that on my plate was false. But I was making good money running this very well-known vegan restaurant. I'd say the best, one of the best. And my dad owns Cafe Gratitude and Gracias Madre. So we were like the vegan restaurants of Los Angeles. And when my dad ate a hamburger in 2015, we refer to it as Burgergate in our family. And so I was terrified, to be honest, to say, and I wasn't lying about it. On my personal Instagram, I always showed like the kids milking a cow or the goats, and I wasn't hiding it, but I certainly wasn't like collaborating with the restaurant as a collab post. And my farm here in California gained a lot of people coming, and we had CSA boxes, and we sold eggs, and we had a dairy herd share. And so if anybody did any like real digging, they would know what I had come to believe, but I didn't like stand up and put a stake in the ground and say, I don't think veganism is the path forward. But through the pandemic, I lost 2 restaurants, and the pieces of the restaurant business, whether you're vegan or not, have been very challenging, and they don't fit together anymore. And I need to get more people through the door, or I need to close. Those were the 2 options. And I really did think about just closing. I live in Texas now. I had to sell my house here because of the condition of the restaurants. But I thought that has no integrity. If I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down fighting, and I'm going to go down talking about what is really important. And I believe that regenerative agriculture is really important. And I believe that the idea that you can cause less death by eating less animals is not true. It's about conscious eating. It's about a grass-fed, grass-finished cow from a local farm that you're going to eat, take a quarter cow share or a half cow share or a whole cow share, and you're going to eat it nose to tail. The only thing that dies in the process, with the exception maybe it stepped on a few crickets or something, the only thing that dies in that process is that cow. If you're eating avocados, those avocados are being guarded against pests year over year over year over year. And just to get our avocado trees from babies to full grown, we killed thousands and thousands of squirrels and moles and voles. And that's true for anything that we're eating. There's a protecting it so it can get to market, which involves death. And so I decided I was going to put a stake in the ground on Earth Day this year and say, you know what, I don't think that veganism is the best thing for the environment. I think it's a little bit of a psyop. And I think that the reality is regenerative agriculture is. And because we can't sell a bunch of windmills or Teslas or solar panels with regenerative agriculture, it doesn't get very much play.
Wow. I love your honesty. And it is a psyop in a way. I've never heard of it put that way, but I mean, even an herbivorous animal, is chowing down on inadvertently bugs. It's displacing the habitat of innumerable critters, as a species. And so you're right that there is ultimately blood on every organism's hand, so to speak, partaking in, in this web that is life.
And we should have that reverence when we eat. Even if I'm eating a grilled cheese sandwich or I'm eating a salad with no animals like supposedly died in it, I want to have reverence for the cow that died to give the bone meal and the blood meal that fertilized the tomatoes or whatever. We want to have reverence when we're eating, that to be alive is to be on the backs of death.
Yeah, I mean, if you take any sort of medication, I mean, that medication has been tested, right, on animals.
For sure.
It's only on the market due to, the fact that it's been able to be tested in the lab setting on animals.
For sure. And that's makeup, and they'll say no animal testing. And I'm like, well, what did they test it on? Do I want to put it on my face? Everything. But yes, there's everything that we're doing in this life is having an impact, a ripple effect. And so who we are with our diet actually can have a profound ripple effect. And in this conversation, there's been a lot of people angry at me, 10,000 comments, like just eviscerating me. But what's missing is context. What's missing is it's just like slit, show them slitting your throat, blah, blah, you're going to slit someone's throat. Like, things are going to die, but how they live actually does matter. And this idea that it's all the same, it's not all the same. We don't have any bacon at the restaurant right now. You know why we don't have bacon at the restaurant right now? Because I couldn't find a source of organic bacon that was not in confinement for the majority of its life. There was nothing like in the woods, in the pasture, in the whatever. So I don't want to contribute to that. So I don't have bacon at the restaurant right now. When I find that, if anybody's out there, reach out. But then maybe we would. But I feel like it does matter. And we get to say how we spend our money, and we vote once a year, and honestly that has very little impact on anything. Everybody's all bought and paid for, but what does have a big impact is how we spend our dollars day to day. We can shift what's going on, and regenerative agriculture is this powerful tool to bring back ecosystems that are unbelievably diverse. And I saw with my farm, just in a matter of 2.5 years, bringing back egrets and bunnies and all these eagles and all this stuff that wasn't there when I got there, when it was just a fallow Roundup filled fields, and that we had 0.01% organic matter. When I sold my farm last December, we had 20% organic matter. So that's like a bajillion times more, but I don't know the exact math, but 0.01% to 20% organic matter. Organic matter is by nature 20% carbon. So that's carbon sequestered, that's better water storage, that's more water infiltrating into the aquifers. And if people feel ambivalent or concerned that climate change is like being exaggerated, I say it doesn't even matter. Forget about the carbon. Just think about the water infiltration, its ability to filter water, the ability for the crops to grow better, and then the human health, the connection between my gut biome, your gut biome, and healthy soil. It's a 70% overlap of the same microbiology, which is proof that we're meant to live eating of the soil. We're not meant to live eating of the hydroponics.
No. And hydroponic, correct me if I'm wrong, but that farming, if you want to call it that, food production method actually leads to nutrient depletion.
And because, so if you put nitrogen in the ground and then the nitrogen is digested by microbiology secrete whatever waste, and then the plant eats that, it's taking that and making it into like for a tomato would be cancer fighting with all those nutrients. But if you just put nitrogen into the water, it just turns to nitrates in the tomato because there's no microbiology to transform it. So it's the difference between something that's carcinogenic or cancer fighting. A vine grown tomato, but even a tomato is only really good for you right off of the vine when it still has those little hairs. And then we pick them green and they travel for a bajillion miles. And it's like, we have to get back to eating a local source of food, a food that came from soil and came from somebody that we know. And the world is going and centralized everything, centralized banks, centralized Medicare, centralized everything is being centralized. Our food system is only about 80% centralized and 20% is still coming from smaller purveyors. And so we actually have a chance here if we just put our foot down and say, no, like I want something different. And here's the thing, you eat a lot of meat. I am a vegetarian. But couldn't me and you both, instead of arguing over who's right, because that's ridiculous because we can't, that's just a silly thing to fight about. What if we both said, I don't want any more poison in my food. I don't want Roundup. I don't want atrazine. I don't want carcinogens in my food. Like that seems like a simple thing that vegans, carnivores, herbivores, and everybody could get on board with. But if we're fighting against each other about who has the best diet, then what ends up happening is the chemical companies are going to win because we're just all distracted. We need to stand strong and say no more chemicals in our food. I do not want chemicals in my food, and everybody should stand for that.
I agree. Yeah, it boggles my mind how many people, so-called experts, particularly on social media, seem to so readily go to bat for these producers of these petroagrochemicals. It doesn't make any sense.
We're spraying chemicals of war on our food, and then we're feeding it to our children. We're spraying chemicals of war on our food, and then we're ultra processing it, and then we're feeding it to our children mixed with water that has more chemicals than we can count in it. And then we're like, I look, it says that by 2040, the average sperm count of a man is going to be 0. Yeah, it's going to be 0. We're all ingesting plastic and chemicals and ultra processed foods, no microbiology, no living organisms. We're completely disconnected. And I feel like it's time that we say in unison, no more. I want food from a local source. I want high quality meat that was raised on grass without suffering. And I want A2 dairy from small dairies that came locally. I want raw milk, and I want no chemicals. Like it's not hard.
Well, when you express concern, you're gaslit by the saying that everything's a chemical. And some of the most toxic compounds on earth are of natural origin. So how do you fight against that kind of dogma, that kind of religiosity?
That's true. Okay, so magnesium's really good for us. People take magnesium, but my well has 2,000 parts per million of magnesium. Well, I'm filtering out some of that magnesium because I'm not sure that my family could get kidney stones or something. That's so much magnesium. You know what I'm saying? So that doesn't mean we have this magnesium pond on our ranch that has more than 2,000 parts. You lay in it, you feel amazing. Okay, great. Magnesium is great. That doesn't mean we should just flood ourselves with magnesium, first thing. And the second thing is, yes, all these things that came from nature but we can't out chemistry nature. That's like, and just because marijuana is natural, I don't blow it in I have a 14-month-old. I don't blow it in her face. If my husband's smoking a joint, he goes outside to do so. He doesn't hotbox the kids. Not that I think that marijuana is bad. I'm just saying she's 14 months old. She has a developing brain. So yes, okay, there's compounds that come in nature. It doesn't mean that we should ingest every single one of them. And some of us are more sensitive to certain compounds than others. My son is on the carnivore or the meat, I don't know, where he just eats raw milk, raw cheese, and fruit and honey and meat. I don't know, whatever that diet is. But and he does great on that. He doesn't do well with any vegetables. Like he just doesn't, they don't, unless he ferments, he makes kimchi and stuff, they don't resonate with, they don't do well in his body because there's probably compounds in those. Does that mean spinach is poisonous for everybody? I don't know, but it means that it doesn't work for him. That doesn't mean we should, spinach is natural. Should we extract something and make everybody eat spinach? No, this is like a silly thing to use that. And the combination of chemicals, plastic, and ultra-processed foods, and the Roundup Ready crops, and our inability to diversify what we're growing. So we're just pumping everybody full of corn and soy because we are growing all this subsidized corn and soy that we need a reason to use. is making us sick. And it's so obvious that it's making us sick. And then we're going to sit here and scream at each other about, oh, your whole food diet is not as good as my whole food diet. And what I'm saying is, let's all just agree to eat whole foods.
Yeah.
No seed oils. That's the other thing we're doing in the restaurant now. We're not doing any seed oils, with the exception of just vegan mayonnaise that is on an option for vegan burgers and stuff. We're not doing any seed oils in the restaurants anymore. We're just only using an algae-based oil and then tallow, and you can choose which you want to have your food cooked in. And so, but if we could just agree on these things, like let's just eat whole foods, let's not eat motor oil, and let's not eat chemicals, it seems like we could pretty much make a good stand. But I live in Texas, and in the town I live in, Bandera, it's a small town. There's a grocery store there. It's called Lowe's. There's nothing, I'm not exaggerating, there's nothing at Lowe's that I would eat except for maybe carbonated water, and occasionally we go get jalapenos and cilantro if we don't have any on the farm because my husband wants it for tacos or something. But literally we don't, there's nothing in that grocery store. The tortillas have this much things in it. The bread has this much, 2 inches of ingredients, 5 inches of ingredients. And that's like the grocery store that most people are going to in that town.
Yeah.
And so we're not united. It's not like people are united on this front to stop eating ultra processed foods. We're not.
Well, your average supermarket today, I mean, the quote unquote groceries contained in your average grocery store, 73% of them, you know, the vast majority of them are ultra processed foods, which are barely foods. You know, if you want to actually unpack the definition of what food is, you know, foods, like we've ceased in the modern world, I feel like particularly today, we've ceased to been able to define anything, right? You put a definition on anything.
No, you can't define
right? And it's like it's a controversy, right? But if our definition of food has become so blurry, you know, and so ill-defined that, you know, some of these like ultra-processed amalgamations of, you know, synthetic vitamins and ultra-refined grain, you know, flour and these seed oils, which you couldn't, you know, press and make in your own kitchen if you tried, we call that food. Then why don't we consider Play-Doh food? Play-Doh is just gluten.
Play-Doh is
famously
flour.
non-toxic, right?
Yeah, it's famously
Is Play-Doh food? Why isn't it food? If it's not food, why isn't it food?
It doesn't have seasoning.
It doesn't have seasoning. That's why it's not
If
food.
you put the spicy Cheetos, flaming Cheetos, like I grew up in a household that we lived on a farm. I've never eaten that kind of food. I had a moment in my 20s when I was pot trimming that I drank Diet Coke because they used to put us at houses with no running water and stuff to trim pot. And this guy used to only buy Diet Coke and he'd be stuck there all day. And then I realized one day, like, I could just bring my own water. Like, what's wrong with me? And I was over my momentary couple of weeks of drinking Diet Coke. But I've literally never drank soda growing up. My mom never had any processed foods in our house. We grew our own foods. I grew up on a farm. My mom worked we were poor, but my mom worked at an organic bakery and her twin sister worked at the natural food co-op so that we could and we were often like freezing flour that had bugs in it so we could sift the bugs out, or we'd get some grains at the store that had gotten a hatch and we'd freeze it and you know, try to get all the bugs out, or bake it and then grind it into different things like that, where people, when I was little, I thought like, that's so gross that we're eating these. But honestly, no, my mom went through, even though we were really poor, my mom went through huge efforts to not feed us any chemicals and any processed foods at all.
You're lucky. I grew up eating tons of processed foods.
But I think that's why I'm 46 and I just had a baby. And I just had 4 babies in 8 years. So 37, 39, 41, 42, 45.
Wow.
So I basically had 4 babies in 8 years in my late 30s and my mid 40s,
That's
early
great.
and mid 40s. And so I believe it's because I only ate, and crazy thing is my mom was vegan. Both my parents were vegan. Oh, my dad was a pescatarian. My mom was vegan. And then one day my mom was making us cookies and the margarine turned to plastic in the oven.
Wow.
And she was like, no more margarine it turned to she like forgot it and then came back and it was like a plate of plastic and she was like, no more. So we grew up vegan with butter. That's the truth. Like we weren't really vegan because my mom fed us butter because she figured out that margarine was plastic. But we grew all carrots and beets and we had a root cellar and we had an apple orchard and we had tons of apples from the apple orchard and tons of potatoes, beets and carrots that we grew and ate all year. And we ate all whole foods. And my mom definitely fed us tempeh and tofu, but she made it all herself from organic soy that she got from the co-op that my mom's twin sister worked at. Like they were very committed to us eating whole foods. And so because of that.
But why no meat?
My mom was 19 when she had me and she had read a book about, the thing is that factory farming is terrible. And so there's this, people get present to what's happening there and then they just draw that line. And she was 19 when she had me and she'd read that book and she was like, ooh, I don't want to participate in that. And then didn't really do more research. My mom still doesn't eat meat. My dad is a dairy farmer. So we all, or maybe we don't know the story, but my dad started Cafe Gratitude and he, in 2015, had to kill one of his dairy cows because he had just recently had started the dairy and he'd had this cow for 6 years and it was sick. And he took it to UC Davis, $5,000 diagnostic. And they said, we can't save it. And he said, okay, we'll put it in the trailer and we'll put it down in the trailer so we can take it home. This is at UC Davis. And the vet was like, the cows have a dual use, you know? And he was like, well, she's like, I haven't given him any medication. It's literally a calcium thing with its bones. Doesn't impact the meat at all. You don't have employees, or I know you're a vegetarian. And my dad's like, thought about it. And they drove the cow back to the farm and my dad held her and they harvested her, or they killed her and then harvested her and cut her into quarters and sent her to the place like the butcher place to cut her, like hang her and wait for her to age and then send her back. And then my dad was thinking to himself, oh, I don't eat meat because I don't want to cause harm. And I only eat wild caught fish because I want things to live their normal life. And then he thought, well, Flower died because I didn't cause any harm. I loved her. I scratched her. I put essential oils on her udder. Like I took good care of her. And so he was like, oh, I'm going to eat a hamburger for the first time in 40 years. And then my stepmom put that on Instagram. This is in 2015. Because they're older. They just thought Instagram was like something for the grandkids to see what's going on the farm. And it was a whole thing. Wow. CNN and Huffington Post and everybody writing articles about.
Well, for people that are listening that don't live in Los Angeles, Cafe Gratitude is like an institution for the vegan community, right? And LA, of course, has a lot of celebrities in it, right?
Yes.
And a lot of celebrities unfortunately, they're prone to drinking the Kool-Aid in many regards. And so it's just a very famous, popular.
It's a very famous, popular vegan restaurant.
I've eaten there once or twice.
And then I have Sage, and they have Cafe Gratitude and Gracias Madre, and all of our restaurants took a 15% hit for an extended period of time, and so we refer to it as Burgergate in our family.
Wow, what did I have there once? I had I think I had like French fries, or no, was it French fries?
What are French fries called? I am.
Oh, I don't even know.
Joyous.
I don't know.
I don't know. Everything is an affirmation at Cafe Gratitude.
That's funny.
But at any rate, that situation had my dad realize, he went from there to eventually eating meat again and saying like, well, wait, if I'm caring for these animals and taking care of them and giving them the best life, then that's all part of the whole thing.
It's all part of the process.
Part of the process.
It's the circle of life.
And I had similar realizations. I mean, we had 10 or 12 sheep killed by a neighbor dog. Didn't even take a single bite out of them. Just killed them for joy of chasing and killing 2 German shepherds. And I realized nature is far more brutal than anything that humanity is doing. And I was sad and there was bleeding, and my husband my husband's indigenous Zapotec from the south of Mexico, and he just saw all that protein, and he just like jumped into. He went and got a gun because 2 were still alive, take them out of their misery. He peeled, like skinned them all, cut them up. And all the people that I called, I was like, does anybody want any lamb? Does anybody want? Everybody's like, oh no, trauma. There was trauma. I don't want any meat with trauma in it. And I was thinking, I'm a vegetarian, so I'm like, I feel like there's trauma in a lot of meat. You just don't know about it. But anyways, but my husband's Mexican, and all the Latino community came up that day, like just buckets upon buckets went out, and people filled their freezers with all of those. And people still talk about it. They say, oh my God, thank you so much for all that lamb or the borrego. Thank you. Gracias para the borrego. But I remember thinking in that day, my husband took a tragedy and the best honoring of their lives was to have everybody in the community be able to eat for an extended period of time. And it was like my husband was shaking at the end of it. It was like so much adrenaline to get all that done in the time, because you know how much time you have before the meat goes bad and everything. But I realized that we are not the most brutal thing that's happening.
No.
Nature is brutal, and if you've ever watched a lion start eating an antelope or a gazelle while they're still alive, or we've had mountain lions come in and kill a pregnant goat and not be able to carry it out of the barn, and so then they kill another one, and so it's lighter. And raccoons just take the brains out of the chickens and kill the next one and the next one and the next one.
God.
If they get into a chicken coop at nighttime, because chickens just stay still at nighttime and perch. Their instinct is to stay still and that nobody will see them. But once the raccoon sees them, if they break into their coop, we'll just eat the brains and throw them. And so this idea that we are the problem because we've created this monster of factory farming, and we've traded all of our resilience for convenience. But if we could say, I want whole foods, and I want there to be care in how the meat is created, and we're willing to be a little bit inconvenienced to go get it or make an agreement with a farmer. My friend AJ Richardson is starting a platform right now that's called From the Farm, and so that it's going to be like an Amazon, but it's all the farmers can put their wares and goods up, whether it's meat or vinegar or anything, and then you'll be able to go on there and shop. And I think that's much needed in this world, so that people can commit to buying from someone. And I think we got to go back to shaking the hand that feeds us and being willing to do the little extra effort. And so to answer your question, my mom doesn't eat meat because she doesn't want to contribute to the factory farming system, which I think a lot of people don't want to contribute to. And I think that's why regenerative farming is extraordinary, because it's better for the animals, it's better for our metabolic health, and it's better for the soil. So therefore, it's a win-win-win, and that's what we all want.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people, like your mom, like still there's this false dichotomy that it's like you're either contributing to the factory farm system or you have to be vegan in order to not contribute to it.
No, but that is what I believed, and that is...
It's false.
It's false. It's a false dichotomy.
Yeah. Why at this point, knowing what you know, have you not integrated, meat into your I'm just kidding.
My husband is like trying so hard to integrate meat into my diet. I never have eaten meat. So I was born to a vegan. And so I don't know if I'm working my way up to it, but I'm looking at, it doesn't occur as food to me. Honestly, I've never eaten it, but I do take heart and soils for her, for liver and for her. So I do believe that organ meat is really important. And I was tired. I started taking the for her heart and soil, organ meats pills when I was 45 and pregnant with my 4th kid in 8 years. Like, I was tired, and I just felt, I'm tired and I don't want. So we were making a lot of bone broth on the ranch because we're trying to use every part of the animals. And so I imagine bone broth will be my gateway.
Yeah.
But it's literally just like been a lot. It's just, and my husband is just like desperate for me to, he married, he's like, a Mexican meat eater that just eats meat like every meal. And I used to make him cook the meat outside when we first got married 11 years ago. Like I built him his own kitchen outside, like true story. And now my whole house is meat. And so I'll be like, is there anything for me for dinner? Like, did anybody consider me? And my husband's like, there's rice. I'm like, I can't just eat rice for dinner. He's like, cheese and rice. I'm like, great. Thank you, honey.
That's so funny.
But so, yeah, we went from a house that was very plant-based to a house that's very meat-based. And because we're trying our hardest to eat of the land, it's way easier to get calories from animals.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of vegetables you have to grow. We have 27 people living on the farm. Like, it's crazy. If a vegan had to grow everything they needed to eat, or they could just crack 2 eggs that just keep coming out of the chicken every morning, no matter what, believe me, they will be eating those eggs because it's so... People can only really be vegan in a world where they don't have to produce, unless you lived in the tropics. If you lived like right on the equator on either side in an area that rains year round, you could probably be vegan pretty easily, fruitarian. But the reality is, like, nobody that's growing all of their own food. I mean, I'm going to say nobody, and someone's going to reach out and be like, I live in Oregon and I can beets and eat canned beets and fermented cabbage all year. Okay. I'm saying it's very hard, maybe not impossible, but
that wouldn't be optimal anyway.
No,
I mean, it sounds like a recipe for protein deficiency.
Yeah, I'm just saying, but I'm saying there will be people on here. Mm-hmm. But growing all of your own food is hard. And we've been moving in that direction for some years now. And so the amount of dairy that you can just gets made from a cow that's just eating grass every day, and you move her to a different place to eat grass, and then she's giving you 5 gallons of milk, and you're making cheese and raw yogurt, and then the amount of a boy cow that you raise up for 2 years and then harvest, and all you did is move them to new grass every single day. No corn, no soy, no factory farming, no crop death. Everybody says, oh, well, if you're eating meat, there's this much crop death. No, there's crop death in vegetables. But if you're eating grass-fed, grass-finished, there's no crop death. That cow is millions of calories that you could feed. I don't know. My one son only eats meat and he's 22. So, I mean, might not be able to feed our whole family for a year off one cow because he eats a lot of meat. And we eat everything. My husband and my son eat tacos de cabeza, tacos de linga, they eat the balls. Like when they harvest a goat, oh my God, you got to try it.
Wow, really?
It's so much testosterone. They look like high. Ask Nicholas when we go downstairs.
Wow.
You can see their eyes are like dilated, like they've done a drug. If you eat, like they just thinly slice the balls of a goat and eat
That's nuts. No pun intended.
It is nuts.
But they raw or no? They cook them
raw right after it.
What is this obsession with eating raw animal balls? I just don't. Does raw preserve some of the nutritional value?
Oh, I don't know.
Does
My
it taste
husband,
better raw?
It's just tradition for my husband. Grew up like literally, if you saw where my husband grew up, it's like 3 walls of like block and a tin roof that used to be a thatch roof. So, and everybody has a hammock, and there's no kitchen, there's no indoor, there's no flushing toilet, and so they ate all the organs got eaten raw like right away because that was how to preserve that. So it's like a tradition. I think it's just like he grew up with 7 brothers. I think it's just kind of came from the you do it. But now my husband's 36, still you do it.
Damn.
But I know people that are making like a jerky right now out of trying to use
balls.
Balls are like, it's going to be a testosterone jerky. But,
interesting.
But I mean, I'm going to say that if you look at other cultures, and this is coming from a vegetarian who knows nothing about it, and they're hunting or whatever, they always eat the organs very first. They eat
nose to tail, I think, is a fantastic way to approach omnivory. But then, a lot of these organ meats. I don't know why raw. Yeah. Neither do I. But, I mean, I'm not. I mean, I do enjoy raw meat. I love carne cruda. You get some like nice lean tenderloin or something. You dice it up. There's some olive oil, salt, lemon on it. I think that's amazing. I like steak tartare. I love sashimi. So yeah, I'm a big, I enjoy eating raw meat. So it doesn't take too, much of a stretch of the imagination to, to consider eating other, parts of the animal raw. But, and organ meats are incredibly nutrient dense. Like
we
liver.
eat everything they clean the guts and to make menudo, and we eat everything. And we also feed our chickens meat. So the butcher gives us all the offcuts that would be getting sent to, because you have to pay to get them to go to like be rendered or whatever. And so we take all of that and we feed our chickens meat. Wow. Chickens are not vegetarians. And so what was crazy.
They're dinosaurs.
Yeah, they're dinosaurs, but they eat everything. So we just give them a little bit of corn-free, soy-free food on top of, but we'll dump out a 55-gallon drum of like guts and all parts of the cow head and everything. Not from our cows, but from other people that are left. We like make it, and they go crazy for it. And then like a day in, there's all maggots in it, and then they're eating the maggots, and people are like, "This is so disgusting." And I'm like, well, vegetarian fed chicken eggs is disgusting because they're not meant to be vegetarians. Veg fed, you always say that, veg fed.
Yeah.
Like, why? What diet of a chicken is vegetarian? They eat bugs and grubs and.
Yeah, why would they advertise that?
Because the idea of chickens eating offcuts of animals is gross to people.
Right, but that's there, but they prefer to eat that, and it would probably lead to more nutrient dense eggs.
What's so interesting is, so we were feeding our chickens like an organic, high carb chicken feed, like no corn, no soy. So what does that lead? A lot of carbohydrates and protein, 16% protein, but all grain, right? And we switched them to the meat and was only giving them like a little bit of the grain. And literally they didn't give us any eggs for 2 weeks. I swear their bodies were having like a transition going into ketosis.
Whoa.
And then crazy eggs. We're out the moon we have more eggs than we know what to do with. We can't even sell all the eggs.
And you eat eggs?
I do eat eggs.
Eggs and dairy.
I eat eggs and dairy. I'm gatewaying into both. Next time we talk, we'll see where I'm at. But.
Well, my listeners know, first of all, I'm not a carnivore dieter. I'm definitely an omnivore. I eat plants as well. And I'm not even like I do eat a fair amount of meat. I eat like red meat probably every day. But I don't really care what it is that people eat. Like I'm not emotionally invested, certainly not in what other people
You don't identify as your fuel?
No.
It's so interesting.
No, my passion is helping people, be able to make decisions with full informed consent, Like for example, somebody who, adopts a vegan diet because they believe that they've been told that it leads to zero death. Like that to me is a decision without full informed consent. You just don't know the reality, you've been misled.
But the internet will tell me that I only have 2 brain cells to rub together and I'm obviously too stupid to know. Yes, but it's not true. But if you even push up against the narrative that veganism is the best for the environment and that veganism is the best for your health, you will be attacked because there's so much vested in the fake meat situation. Like there's bots. I'm not exaggerating. All these people that are attacking me, some of them are real people, but some of them are literally just like bots. Like they're just like saying the same things over and over and over on every post. And they're just over and over and over. And I'm like, why is there so much commitment to this? I actually didn't think there'd be so much pushback on regenerative agriculture. I thought that, yes, the vegans were going to be mad. But this idea that regenerative agriculture is stupid, it's not proven, it's the worst thing, I'm a liar, it's greenwashing. But I didn't expect that. I expected that you're a murderer, you're eating dead carcasses, you're profiting on the murder of. I expected that. I didn't expect this like I was like, it's definitively not greenwashing. I've been to every farm. I vetted these things. And I've been doing regenerative agriculture for 6, almost 7 years now. I'm actually this lady was screaming at me the other day in the restaurant, like, you have no idea how sentient cows are. And I was like, I literally do. I said, I, unlike you, have cows with names that I love and care for. And yes, sometimes they get harvested. And I have had to say goodbye. I actually think I'm more related than you are. And she's like, have you seen this movie, Earthlings? Yes, I have. It's a good piece of film highlighting the atrocities in factory farming. I'm not. That's not what I'm contributing to. It's not what I'm doing. It's a totally different program over here.
Yeah.
And people, there's like no room for nuance.
Right.
It's just there's those cows on the side of the 5 up to their waist in their own feces, and Earthlings, like death in the abattoirs, or nothing. But that we can't have that. There is nuance in life.
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority of people in my space, in the health and wellness world, that focus on, topics like nutrition, many of them do come from backgrounds of disordered eating, and if not, have risks, risk factors for disordered eating. And then you take, people who are on these, the more extreme ends of the spectrum that have adopted these very extreme fringe diets, whether, pure carnivorism or pure veganism, which, veganism is a socially acceptable eating disorder in my view. It's a very fringe, super extreme diet, but it's never portrayed as such. It's always portrayed as a reasonable, healthful alternative to the standard American diet.
It's also portrayed as like morally superior.
Yeah, which is not.
And so it's not. There's no proof. There's actually been a few studies. You can look them up. I can't remember who did them right now. That said that eating nose to tail causes less death. Grass-fed beef, if you really wanted to cause the least amount of death, you would only eat grass-fed, grass-finished beef. And I'm not saying that that's a good diet either.
That's actually the most vegan item in the supermarket. Because you alluded to this earlier on, the area under the curve of death and suffering when you harvest one cow, that's one life.
One life.
And you can raise that cow in a way where that cow only experiences one bad day,
Maybe
it's not even the day that's bad. Maybe
it's just a moment. And here's the thing. If you're thinking, would you rather, the game you used to play when you're a teenager, would you rather? And it's like, would you rather be eaten by a lion while you're still alive, or one bolt to the head and you're done? That's
right.
it.
It's lights out in
lights
nanoseconds.
Out in nanoseconds. And to me,
I'm not even I'm in no way an expert in this topic, agriculture, but it's just common sense.
I'm not an expert, but I'm doing it in real life. I'm moving cows every day. I'm moving goats. I'm moving sheep every day. I've watched my husband harvest a fair amount of animals. I know what's involved. I have 4 kids. 2 are vegetarians and 2 eat meat. They all eat eggs and dairy. They've all been present. Like, my kids are fully aware of what's going on. They've all been present and are fully aware that, like, if I eat bacon, that's a pig. This kind of, my son will be like, a Duroc pig makes the best bacon. Like, okay, great. I don't know. I don't eat bacon. And my daughter's like, I don't want to eat meat. Okay, you don't have to. No, there's no pressure here. Like, but everybody knows. I would say that when people are saying, I don't know what I'm talking about, I don't know what I'm talking about, I would assert that people living in urban environments buying Impossible burgers don't know what they're talking about.
Oh, no.
And I have not been able to prove this to be 100% factually, but I've been told this, and it makes sense. I've been told this by cattle producers, that there's a bunch of fiber that's left over when making Impossible burgers and the other what Beyond and whatever. Mm-hmm. And because the major investors in these things are cattle producers, right? All of that fiber is being fed to cows in consolidated feedlot systems. So either your Impossible burger is being subsidized by consolidated feedlots, or consolidated feedlots are being subsidized by Impossible burger.
Fascinating.
And I believe that to be true because When you buy olive oil, what happens to the olives that were pressed? They're fed to cows. When you buy almost anything that you can think of where there's a fibrous byproduct, it's fed to cows. Juice pulp from cider. I mean, anything you can think of, the fibrous byproduct, vinegar making, wine making, is fed to cows.
Well, cows have multiple stomachs.
Yes.
So for them, it's a great food, right?
It might not be a great food, but it's a food, it's cheap. Yeah. And so that is happening everywhere. So your olive oil might be subsidized by the consolidated feedlot system. Like, it's all interconnected. And that's the way it should be. I'm not saying we shouldn't have necessarily the way we finish cows. But even if you were going to eat a cow, this is controversial for me to say, but if you're going out and you want to be eating the best possible situation, if you're eating beef, even if it was from a consolidated feedlot system, it lived on grass, likely with its mother, all the way up until it got fattened up, like 4 or 5 months before it was born, or before it was killed. So I don't want to contribute to that system, but the beef system is far less suffering than like chicken. I think we probably have to lower our consumption of chicken. In reality,
and our chicken consumption has only increased, whereas our beef consumption actually has decreased.
Because people think that chicken is better, but more suffering, more death. It's just, I'm not saying we shouldn't eat chicken. And there is actually people doing Big Bluff Ranch where we're getting the chicken from the restaurant, doing the right thing. But I'm saying we should eat less chicken. Every time you eat an organic chicken's like this big, you could eat the whole thing in one seating. People go, my cooks keep going, can you get bigger organic chicken? No, this is the size. They're not big when they're organic. So organic chicken, you're going to eat that. Your family can maybe feed the whole family one chicken. It's a very small amount of meat, and that's one sentient being. A cow can feed the family for a year. So if that's really the vegan's concern of how much death, then you would only eat beef.
So true. And so it's like,
people do not like this.
People don't like it. Yeah.
But and then people say, well, what about, no, because of crop death and because they're eating corn and soy. No, I'm saying grass-fed, grass-finished, on pasture. And lots of people are doing grass-fed, grass-finished, on pasture. We're not talking about, oh, you can't feed the world like this. Well, no, you actually can. All of our beef is going the first 15 months, the first 10 months, the first 19 months, depending, on grass. They're saying there's not enough room for regenerative agriculture. Based on what? Literally all of our beef is on grass. Nobody can afford to feed a cow from the time it's born until people say, oh, well, you're taking the babies away from the mom. That's actually a dairy thing. Beef farmers keep the cow with the mom for as long as the mom will breastfeed. The beef farmer wants that cow drinking breast milk. So the other thing is, when you're eating beef, you're eating a cow that was likely breastfed for 9 months to a year, longer than the average child.
Wow.
In America, at least.
So interesting. Yeah, I mean, I thought beef is like, sometimes you hear sticklers to like the, beef quality and how they make that's the sole thing. But I love the nuance that even a factory, that you said that even factory farmed beef, while the factory farm system is abhorrent, and at scale, and it's like, doing all kinds of nasty things to the environment, and it's not the ideal situation for the cow from an animal welfare perspective, it still yields a highly nutrient dense food. And I'm saying, if you're out and you're looking at a menu and you're like, there's farm raised salmon, there's chicken, and there's beef, what I'm saying is that the beef is the least suffering. I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying if really the least suffering is what you're looking for. Yeah. Then that's that. And it's not a popular opinion. And I sound crazy because it's coming from a vegetarian who I dedicated my life to this. I owned like one of the most popular vegan restaurants in Los Angeles. Well, if anything, the fact that you don't even eat it and you're advocating for it, I think makes you more trustworthy.
I said this to a woman that was crying in the restaurant. She's like, I can't trust you. I said, consider how much evidence I've had to have been presented with and seen to come from where you're sitting to where I am right now. So much evidence.
Yeah.
People are like, show me your evidence. Show me this. I mean, we're talking, people are on my phone just like constantly, show me the evidence. I'll send you studies or whatever. But I'm talking about years of just watching soil just come alive from cows being on it, watching my kids' teeth, the younger ones that have less vegan diet have straighter teeth, like it's straight Weston A. Price. Like, I mean,
I love that.
So obvious. And the most obvious thing, I tell this story a lot. I'm sitting there with my third child breastfeeding him, and we have a cow, Una, and her udder's like this big, and her calf is only sucking on 2 quadrants, and we're milking the excess milk because cows are made now to make the jerseys, or they're made to make a lot of milk, right? More than just for the baby. And so I'm milking off the cow into the gutter. I'm breastfeeding my child. I'm like, this is liquid gold. Oh. And then I'm like feeding my older kids oat milk from Costco in a Tetra pack with fucking glyphosates and seed oils. And I'm like, wait, if my milk is the perfect God's creation with all the microbiology for the environment that I'm in, well, then that milk is also God's creation with all the microbiology from the environment that my kids live in. And all of a sudden I'm like, no more milk in a box. And my kids are crying because you know how much sugar? It took a long time to get my kids now they love raw milk, but it took some time to get them onto the raw milk program because organic oat milk, organic soy milk, organic almond milk, they all have sugar in them.
Oh, yeah. And emulsifiers and
all types of nar. And so that was like one of those, and I'm like, why am I? And then people would be like, I'd be at the restaurant and people were like, I saw you guys, oh yeah, well, we're drinking a little of the milk from the cow. There's more, we let the calf have it. But then I'm like, what am I even explaining this to people? Like, oh, the chickens just leave the eggs, so we think we should eat them. And the people at the restaurant would tell me, at the place that I work, like the animal rescue, they boil them and give them back to the chickens. And I'm thinking like, okay, well, I'll consider that. But it's like a perfect food. Like an egg is such a perfect food.
Such a perfect food.
And in a world, I have 5 children. At that time, I had 4 restaurants, 2 farms. I now have 2 restaurants and 2 farms. But it's really hard to feed your kids healthy food. An egg is the ultimate like snack that's so easy to do. I can hard boil eggs and they'll eat those, and I can fry an egg, a toad in the hole, the bread with the egg in the hole.
It's a cognitive multivitamin, especially for children whose brains are under development. Like you don't get a more perfect food.
And so the idea, and then I'm like justifying it to people. Well, the chickens just, and so I was never a secret about what was going on at my house, but I was feeling like I had to justify these things. But no, my kids all eat eggs. My kids all eat raw milk, raw kefir. Raw kefir with maple syrup is the.
I've never tried that. You just combine kefir. Kefir's fermented milk, right?
Kefir is like a cultured milk, different than yogurt, with far more microbiology.
Oh, interesting.
But it's interesting. We've been getting it here, like at the store, raw from the raw farm, because we're here in LA right now. And the one that we make is so much more sour. The kids are like, this tastes like yogurt. It's not sour like kefir. But yeah, we do kefir. We do smoothies with honey and strawberries and kefir or yogurt every day. So, but it's hard to feed your kids healthy food. And then it's hard to grow food that you can trust. So I know I can trust what's going into my cows. So therefore I can trust what's coming out of my cows. And we grow fruit through the summertime, and I freeze it all winter. And I think it's great food. And eggs they're prolific. And imagine I'm turning stuff that's going to get rendered into soap or makeup or I don't know what into chicken eggs that my kids are eating. It's a miracle.
Like the throwaway parts of the cow that your chickens are now eating. Yeah. Wow. I mean, as long as you stick mainly to whole foods, but I do think there's so much value to be derived from animal source foods. I mean, I in the past drank the Kool-Aid, and I was, I'd buy almond milk, and there was a time, I mean, more than a decade ago, where I was drinking soy milk.
Yeah.
Because it was I thought it was well, it is a good source of protein, but it's just there's all these emulsifiers and added sugar.
I thought I drove a hybrid and drank my almond milk latte and used my reusable bags, and I thought that I was making a difference. And now that I'm on the farm, literally making a difference, I realize we want to give people stupid things to do so they don't actually take the actions that they need to do. And the actions we need to do is we need more farmers. We need more people to get onto land. The average age of a farmer is like 70 something years old. And so we got to...
And we got to protect our farmers.
And we got to protect our farmers.
Yeah.
I have this idea about eventually when some land comes up around my farm, imagine instead of having golf courses in the middle of communities, imagine if we put around my farm, we got some 10-acre lots, and then it was like a community, and in the center is this regenerative farm, and there's the restaurant, and there's the farm store, and there's all the produce. Because not everybody wants to milk a cow every day, move cows every day. I understand that. Everybody has different gifts to give in the world. But imagine that instead of centering our life around a golf course or around a shopping plaza or all the things that we center living spaces around, what if we centered living spaces around regenerative farms and then created these communities that were contributing to that farm's well-being and ability to thrive? It's so hard to make a living farming. It's part of why I moved to Texas. Is everything I wanted to do as far as agro-tourism in California was like, oh, the county, the coordinates, the order, blah, 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 blah. But we're doing hospitality because it's very hard to make a living in farming. But by doing the hospitality and doing all of these events on the ranch and festivals and have all 40 beds for renting out, people come and they have their family reunion, and then we're cooking for them. So we're getting top dollar for our food from the farm because I'm serving it on a plate from the kitchen, And so I think we do need to find ways to support our farmers, and we need to find ways to buy directly from them. And my request for your listeners would be, in whatever ways, if you got to do shady raw milk deals at the gas station with your Amish folks, do it. If you got to order meat on the internet, go on Craigslist and buy a quarter cow from somebody. But let's be as local as possible, and let's be as whole food as possible. I actually think pasteurized dairy is not good food.
Interesting.
I think
that's a controversial statement.
I think that pasteurized dairy has, I don't know.
But why? It's just dairy that's been heated.
Yeah, and all the microbiology that's in it, that's made for you to be able to process it, has been killed. The microbiology in raw milk is 94% compatible with your gut biome. Like, people are doing raw milk cleanses right now to reset the people that weren't breastfed and maybe don't have certain microbiology because their mom did it, they were C-section, or their mom didn't breastfeed them, or whatever, to reset their microbiology. And so I'm not saying it's not calories and protein. I'm saying the microbiology in it, when it's raw, is the perfect microbiology to feed the microbiology in your gut to have your body process it. And I'm saying that lactose intolerance is a reaction to us processing milk.
But why do so many people consider it dangerous in the evidence, quote unquote, evidence-based camp? I mean, there's a lot of pushback.
There is a lot of pushback. I would say it's the dairy lobby. If you want to, I think ultimately it's the dairy lobby that's pushing back. And I think this bird flu scare is going to try to push back on raw milk right now pretty hard. We'll see how it plays out. They're already suggesting in Idaho that people stop selling raw milk. But the way that this whole thing came with the brucellosis and everything like that, in the 20s or 30s, people were feeding cows in New York City only byproduct from the distillery. And I feed just brewer's grade to my cows. Like I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I think it's a good use of spent grain. We have a brewery here in Los Angeles. It goes to the cows at my old farm, and I think that's good use of grain. But when you have cows on concrete, living in a city, only eating brewer's grain, they're not meant to only eat grain. It's not a good situation. The cows were getting sick. The milk was coming out blue. Like if you listen to all of the evidence about what at this time, and then they were adding talcum powder and paint and flour and all the stuff to make the milk turn back to white.
Ew.
And people were getting sick with brucellosis and people died. And so we instead of changing the cleanliness of the facilities, we started boiling the milk. And that's when pasteurization came in. And so I would say that there's people in the evidence. The thing about the evidence-based camp and the science camp is that if you realize there's who's paying for the science is the one thing we always want to ask. And then also just like, I have been having raw milk for a couple years now, and there's so many people that I've given like a half gallon of raw milk to, and they've called me later that day and said, I could hear my body, my mind saying, yes, more of that when I was drinking it. Like literally I could feel, and the same conversation from multiple people that don't know each other at all have called me, but my body was saying, yes, more of that. We need more of that as soon as I had that raw milk.
Wow.
And I had a little bit of a hard time with my stomach with the raw milk at first, but I'd been drinking oat milk and soy milk and almond milk for years and probably didn't have the correct microbiology to digest it.
Yeah.
And now I don't drink anything but raw milk.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah, I've definitely had it here and there because in California, especially in LA,
it is legal and available.
It's legal, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So when I see it, I buy it. But I wouldn't say that I preferentially reach for it. Like I definitely, I would say the majority of dairy that I consume is pasteurized.
Even at the restaurant right now, we're doing all raw A2,
Wow.
A2. Not for your latte, it's an extra charge to get raw milk, but all the cheese is raw. The camembert and the cheddar and the mozzarella is raw A2, A2. And then, I mean, it's cooked onto your pizza at the moment that you're eating it, but if you get it like in a sandwich, it's raw.
And did I see you guys are going to start using like only sourdough for all of your...
We're only doing our burger buns are sourdough, and our pizza dough is sourdough, and our donuts are non-vegan donuts are sourdough.
Wow.
And our cinnamon rolls with the A2 cream cheese frosting are sourdough.
And fermented wheat, like sourdough bread, is better. It's like better for you, is it not?
Way better. So sourdough bread has like 200 parts per million of gluten, and pitch yeast. I don't know what normal yeast in a restaurant we call it pitch because you don't have to wait for it. Just pitch it in, it rises. But pitch yeast bread has 2,400 parts per million, and so it's exponentially less to be 200 parts per million of gluten to 2,400 parts per million. And so a lot of people are saying, "Oh, I'm gluten intolerant," and what I believe that there wouldn't be lactose intolerance if we were not pasteurizing milk. I believe if we were not spraying Roundup on our wheat directly before harvest, which is a very terrible practice that we started in 1996. Roundup is a weed killer, so it was never really approved to spray directly on the food. It was not ever thought that would be a thing. So it wasn't ever tested for that because it was sprayed on the ground around. So 14 days before harvest is the last time you can spray it. But when they figured out on a grass that they need to be dead and dry to harvest it, they can spray it and then the whole field is dead and dry in 14 days.
Oof.
And then they can harvest it. So it's since 1996, the majority of our wheat and oats have been sprayed with Roundup. So those two things, not that we've been eating bread for centuries and people have not gotten sick from it, people have not gotten obese, I would say it's because it's fermented and they also didn't have the Roundup on it. And so when people say that they are gluten intolerant, I always say, have you tried eating flour that you're sure doesn't have Roundup in it and is fermented with a long fermentation process? And a lot of people can. My sister-in-law was gluten intolerant and now she can eat. But what's interesting is we moved out of Fillmore and we were all around us was avocados and oranges and lemons, and they're all getting sprayed with Roundup. And now in Texas, she's able to eat gluten. And what I actually suspect is that her body was on overload from the amount of Roundup that was just in the air out there. But the body, Roundup doesn't have an effect on it. That's why they say it doesn't have any effect on the human body, meaning the skin bag that houses your soul. But the microbiology, the majority of it has a shikimate pathway.
Right.
And it gets killed from the Roundup. So yes, in one sense, our body doesn't get hurt by it. But the microbiology that's keeping our body alive, we're literally like Weekend at Bernie's. We need that microbiology to keep the body moving, is being desecrated by that. And then bread has a huge amounts. Cheerios is the highest level of glyphosates of anything on the market right now. And it's like kids' first food. Because oats is the same, spraying right before. And then beer is in the top 10. And people are getting gout and GERD and all types of stuff. But it's because the beer, it's water soluble. So you boil the grain to make the beer. And then you're just draining it off. And then we're drinking that on a Friday night.
A toxic soup.
Toxic soup.
I mean, I eat oats occasionally, but I buy only organic.
Only organic.
And
that should be for
And I don't buy by the way, I don't buy everything that I eat organic. Like, I think that, if I'm buying an avocado, I don't feel like that needs to be organic. A banana, I don't feel like that needs. But for any kind of like oat product, if I eat a largely gluten-free diet, but I've changed my mind on this too. I've started integrating like sourdough when I feel like it, Like, I can't wait to try the sourdough donut in your restaurant. It sounds amazing.
Yeah,
or
and
pizzas.
the pizza. Yeah. We have like a wild boar sauce. We have a wild boar pepperoni with the A2 cheese with a sourdough crust.
Wow.
Or you could get a bison sausage peppers sourdough crust.
I just don't want to be poisoned. You know, and I feel like
wait, that should be so obvious. Like, can we just agree on that? Like, this is what I will tell my customers. Like, I will serve you the best quality of what's available, and I won't poison you. And I'll do the research to make sure that that's happening. That seems like that we should expect that from every restaurant, but we can't. We cannot.
And these, like, the science camp that like can't seem to wrap their head around the fact that, this idea of cumulative injury, the fact that we're just like being bombarded today, left and right, with, so exposures to so many pollutants. Let them continue to toe that party line, so to speak, and natural selection will just work itself out.
My best friend died. We started the restaurant together. We were best friends, and she died at 37 years old in 2018. And I remember watching her die and just thinking, so unfair. She jogs 5 miles a day. She eats super healthy. She, everything that you could do. And I remember saying, like, it's just not fair. And she's like, we live in a toxic soup. And she's like, so we don't know exactly what it was, but it was cumulative over time, whatever happened in her body. And so this idea that it doesn't have a cumulative effect, I just don't even understand how people can think that.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's worse than the people who don't think it's a cumulative effect are saying, well, you can't prove it's that. Like, you'll look at this, there's this curve of like autism, for example. And I've seen people put it up against the vaccine schedule. I've seen people put it up against Roundup usage. I've seen people put it up against the ultra processed foods. And I've seen people put it up against seed oils. So yes, it goes up with all of those things. So does that mean that we can't prove it's any of those things? Or can we think that it's a cumulative effect of all of those things? I don't know. But this idea that's like, oh, well, if you put it up against any of them, so it's none of them.
Right. Well, it's gaslighting, and it's a lot of these people in the so-called, and by the way, like, I love science. Like, I love nutrition science. I've built my career on reporting on it and communicating it. But, it's these personas that you see in the so-called evidence-based camp on social media that it seems like their whole entire MO is to confirm the biases of the people that follow them, and then to gaslight everybody else. because we do. I mean, there's so much wrong today, and there are so many industrial chemicals that are still being used commercially that have shown evidence of harm, and it's just like, and yet we continue to assume that these corporations, like, they have our backs, that they have our best interests in mind. And there's been so many instances throughout human history where that has proven to not be the case.
It's actually most often proven to not be the case.
Yeah.
This idea, like, if we look back, we're never like, oh, well, when the government was so good and honest and when the corporations were so good and honest, it's like that was a bad time. Oh, that was a dark time. That was a dark time. And so I think that we do have to use critical thinking, and we also have to not live in a fishbowl of our own opinions. Like, if we just live in a fishbowl of our own opinions and we only get our news or our science or our information from one group, then we're just, like you said, confirming our own biases. And if I did that, I would still be, thinking that veganism is the path forward.
Correct.
When it's so clear. And I literally set out to have a vegan farm where nothing ever died, and it would be a rescue. And so I always say we have to learn to agree with people that we don't love and love people that we don't agree with, because if someone's saying something that makes sense, even if we don't like them, that we don't agree with them on other issues, it's crazy. We just shut things off and we don't hear anymore.
Yeah. And this is such a powerful message for you to communicate, because, I mean, your family has made a fortune on selling vegan cuisine.
But not as a scam, like the way people are making it. Like, we jumped.
No, but your mom obviously was vegan, so I'm not saying it's a scam. But it's
no. But people are like, she jumped on the trend and then jumped off when it's no. And I'm literally looking at them like, I sold my house, my car, my RV because my restaurants are not doing well. I'm not jumping off. First of all, I've been in it for 15 years. And secondly, I was raised this way.
Yeah.
But yes, that's the crazy thing, is we are the family of, but we believed it in a didactic way, honestly, for many years.
You were indoctrinated like so many people are, but you've seen the light. And I'm super appreciative for the work that you're doing, and for the vulnerability that you've displayed, and the willingness to pivot, right?
And to say I made a mistake. How often do people say I made a mistake publicly? I believed something that's not true, and I propagated that, and I looked at everything in the world through that lens.
There you go. And now you can get the best regenerative eggs, meat.
Yeah.
At Sage Kitchen.
Sage Regenerative Kitchen, the first regenerative restaurant in Los Angeles. We only have 2 locations left, but that's Pasadena and Echo Park. So we hope that you come out and support. And if you're in Texas, we have a hospitality ranch, Sovereignty Ranch. You can come visit us and eat the best regenerative meat and vegetables right there from the farm, and stay in a tiny house.
So great.
Swim in the magnesium pool with your kayak.
Damn, so great. Well, thanks for coming out. Thanks for making time. One last question for you before we get to that. Where can people find you on social media? And
I'm Chef Mollie, and then the restaurant is The Kind Sage, and the ranch is Sovereignty Ranch.
Love it. Last question. What does living a genius life mean to you?
Living a genius life means to follow what you believe passionately, but if something else makes more sense, be willing to change your mind.
Love it. Thanks, Mollie. Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.